The storm hit the mountains like a living creature, roaring, tearing, swallowing everything beneath a wall of white. In the middle of that chaos, a small boy stumbled through the drifts, his breath breaking in the freezing air. His name was Oliver, 12 years old, orphaned hours earlier when the avalanche swept away the rescue cabin that had sheltered his group. Now he had nothing but a shredded coat, frost-bitten fingers, and a memory of warmth slipping farther away with every step. The wind screamed around him, pushing him backward, burying his footprints as fast as he made them. His body was shutting down, his vision flickering. "Please," he whispered into the storm, his voice barely a thread. "Someone, please." But the mountains gave no answer. Only the endless howl of winter. His knees buckled. The snow welcomed him, cold and soft, pulling him into its silent grave. His eyes fluttered, closing on a world that had given him nothing but loss. Then through the blizzard another sound rose. A howl, low, powerful, impossibly close. Oliver forced his eyes open one last time. A wolf stood there, massive, silver-coated, its fur rippling in the wind. It moved toward him with careful steps, steam rising from its breath. Oliver wanted to run, but his body wouldn't obey. He waited for the animal to lunge to finish what nature had started. Instead, the wolf lowered itself beside him, pressing its warm body against his frozen limbs. It curled around him, shielding him from the wind, its golden eyes watching the storm with fierce, unshakable vigilance. In the silence that followed, the boy heard his heartbeat slow, but steady. The snow raged around them, but the wolf never moved. It stayed, it guarded, it breathed for both of them. By morning, the storm had passed, and what rescuers would eventually discover in that clearing, a child alive only because a wild wolf refused to leave his side, would become a story whispered for years across the mountain towns. But what happened between that night and the dawn was something no one else saw, something that would change Oliver's life forever. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss our most emotional stories from the wild tales of survival. Loyalty and the strange, beautiful bonds that can form when no one expects them. Now, let's begin.
Oliver didn't remember falling asleep. Only the cold, the kind that crawled under the skin and stole pieces of him breath by breath. When his eyes opened again, it was to a soft glow. Morning, thin sunlight filtered to the branches overhead, turning the snow around him pale gold. He blinked slowly, confused. His body felt heavy, as if it belonged to someone else. Then he felt it, a warm, steady weight press against his side. The wolf. Oliver gasped, jerking upright so quickly that pain shot through his ribs. The movement startled the animal. Its ears shot up, muscles tensing, but it didn't attack. It simply watched him, golden eyes locked onto his face with unnerving intelligence. Oliver stumbled backward, landing in the snow. "Don't hurt me," he stuttered, voice raw. "Please." The wolf didn't move. It stood, stretching its long limbs, shaking snow from its fur. It was even larger than he remembered. Broad shoulders, powerful legs, fur thick enough to repel the cold that had almost killed him. But there was something else, too. Something unexpected. Its tail wasn't stiff or raised in aggression. Its posture was alert but calm, almost protective. Oliver pulled his knees up, shivering. The cold crept into him immediately now that the wolf's warmth was gone. He wrapped his arms around himself, teeth chattering. Why didn't you leave?" he whispered. The wolf stepped forward, slow and deliberate, and sat in front of him, not threatening, not curious, present, watching. Oliver swallowed hard. The truth hit him like a slow, spreading warmth. The wolf had kept him alive. He remembered flashes from the night, the storm screaming, his body going numb, his mind fading into darkness. And then warmth, fur, breath beside his ear, a heart beating close enough to feel. He had thought it was a dream, but it wasn't. He wiped his face with trembling hands. "You saved me." The wolf blinked once, slow, as if acknowledging the truth. For a long moment, neither moved. The only sound was a gentle whisper of wind through the trees. Then Oliver looked around and realized where he was. Not the mountain path, not the cabin ruins. A forest clearing he didn't recognize. The storm had reshaped the world, snapping trees, burying everything in sight. He could have been 10 miles off course or 100. He stood shakily. His legs wobbled beneath him, barely able to hold his weight. The wolf followed the movement, rising to all fours, eyes attentive. Oliver took one step forward, and his knee buckled. He fell, hands sinking into the snow. Pain radiated from his feet. Frostbite was already nibbling at his toes. He clenched his jaw, trying to stand again. "I have to get out of here," he muttered. "I have to find someone." The wolf let out a low sound, half growl, half warning. Oliver froze, heart pounding. The animal stepped closer and nudged him gently with its muzzle. Oliver stiffened, unsure whether to scream or stay completely still. But the wolf's touch wasn't violent. It was guiding. "Are you trying to help me?" The wolf turned its head toward the trees, toward a narrow path barely visible beneath broken branches and churned snow. Then it looked back at him. Oliver understood. "You want me to follow you?" The wolf walked a few steps ahead and stopped, turned to make sure he was coming. Oliver hesitated. Every survival lesson he'd heard told him never to follow a predator. But every instinct inside him knew the truth. He wouldn't last an hour on his own. He took a shaky breath and stood, leaning against a fallen branch for support. "Okay," he whispered. "I'll trust you." The wolf led slowly, staying close enough that Oliver could follow without losing sight. Each step burned through the boy's legs, but he pushed forward. The trees around them creaked, heavy with snow. Every breath was a cloud. But the wolf moved with ease, weaving through the forest as if the storm had been nothing more than a passing breeze. They walked like that for nearly an hour until they reached a small ledge overlooking a frozen valley. Oliver stared in disbelief. This wasn't the mountain path he knew. The storm had swallowed everything familiar. Below them lay a vast expanse of unbroken white, forest after forest stretching toward distant peaks. "We're really lost," he whispered. The wolf stood beside him, tail low, ears alert. It wasn't afraid, but Oliver was. His chest tightened with panic, tears burning his eyes. "I'll never find my way home. I'll die out here." At the sound of his sob, the wolf turned sharply and nudged him with its head. Firmer this time, as if snapping him out of despair. Oliver blinked. The wolf let out a soft chuff, almost encouraging. "You're not leaving me, are you?" Oliver whispered. The wolf sat down beside him. It didn't move away. In that moment, something shifted inside Oliver. The fear didn't disappear, but it made room for something else. Hope. Fragile, trembling hope. He exhaled shakily. "Okay, together then." The wolf rose and began down a narrow slope. Oliver followed slowly, gripping branches for balance. The descent was steep, and twice he slipped, catching himself at the last moment. The wolf glanced back each time, checking on him. At the bottom of the slope, the trees opened into a shelter hollow hidden from the wind. The wolf padded forward and stopped near a fallen log, circling it once before settling down. Oliver approached carefully. The hollow was warm, warmer than the rest of the forest. Protected, quiet. The wolf looked at him, then at the empty space beside its flank. "You want me to sit there?" A slow blink. Oliver lowered himself into the snow, leaning against the wolf's thick coat. The warmth sank into him immediately, melting the cold clinging to his bones. He closed his eyes, his breathing steadying. "Thank you," he whispered. The wolf's steady breath answered him. As the first real calm since the avalanche settled over him, Oliver didn't know where the path ahead would lead, or if he would ever see another human again. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wasn't alone anymore. Oliver woke to the sensation of warmth breathing beside him. For a moment, he forgot where he was. The hollow, the storm, the endless white, none of it felt real. Only the soft rhythmic rise and fall of the wolf's chest anchored him to the world. His face was buried in thick fur, warmer than any blanket he had ever known. When he finally opened his eyes, the forest around him glowed with early morning light. Frost glittered across the fallen log and the branches overhead. The air was crisp but calm, the violent storm now a distant memory. The wolf was already awake. Its head was lifted, ears twitching at every sound. It watched the tree line with the stillness of a guardian, every muscle quietly awake beneath its silver coat. But when Oliver stirred, the wolf turned to him, not with hunger, not with indifference, but with something startlingly close to recognition. "Morning," Oliver whispered, his voice cracking with cold and exhaustion. The wolf blinked slowly, tipping its head just slightly, as if acknowledging the greeting. Oliver pushed himself upright. Pain lanced through his toes and fingertips, sharp, fiery burst that made him gasp. Frostbite creeping in. He gritted his teeth, rubbing his hands together, trying to coax warmth back into them. I need to find shelter," he murmured. "Real shelter. Food. People." He looked around the forest. Nothing but endless trees. Snow so deep it swallowed his boots. Silence as heavy as stone. He swallowed hard. "I can't do this alone." As if hearing the words, the wolf rose to its feet. It stretched, lifted its head to sniff the air, then glanced back at Oliver. Not a command, not a warning, an invitation. "You want me to follow?" Oliver asked softly. The wolf turned and began walking, slow enough that the boy could keep up. Oliver stood shakily, brushing snow from his hair, and limped after it. His feet screamed with every step, but the cold was worse when he stopped moving. They climbed out of the hollow and back into the open forest. The wolf wove through the trees with fluid grace, pausing every few steps to ensure the boy was behind it. Sometimes it waited with a flick of its tail. Sometimes it circled back to nudge his leg. When he stumbled, it wasn't leading him randomly. It had a purpose. "Do you know where we're going?" Oliver asked. His voice was small, breaking. The wolf didn't answer, of course, but it didn't need to. After nearly an hour of slow trekking, they came upon a narrow ravine. A frozen creek cut through its center, the ice cracked in jagged lines like glass. The wolf jumped down effortlessly. Oliver slid down after it, nearly falling before catching himself on a rock. The ravine was sheltered from the wind, and for the first time since the avalanche, Oliver felt the cold ease its grip. The wolf padded ahead, nose low to the frozen ground, searching. Then it stopped near a cluster of rocks and pawed at the snow until a patch of dark earth showed through. Oliver frowned. "What is it?" The wolf pawed again, then stepped aside. Beneath the melted patch, Oliver saw the remnants of something familiar. Charred wood. Ash. A fire pit. "Someone else was here," he whispered. "Maybe days ago, maybe weeks." The wolf nudged the ashes, then looked toward the east where the forest grew dense. Oliver forced breath into his frozen lungs. Were they headed that way? The wolf's ear flicked. It was the closest thing to an answer. Oliver's stomach cramped suddenly. Hunger, sharp and merciless. He groaned softly and doubled over, clutching his middle. He hadn't eaten since the avalanche. Not since he'd watched the mountain take everything from him. He squeezed his eyes shut. "I need food, anything, or I won't make it." When he looked up, the wolf was gone. Panic surged instantly. "No, please don't leave me." His voice echoed off the ravine walls. Only silence replied. Oliver's throat tightened, breath shaking. He sank to his knees in the snow, tears freezing on his cheeks. "I trusted you," he whispered. I don't want to be alone again." Minutes passed. Then branches rustled behind him. Oliver spun around just as the wolf reappeared, trotting through the ravine with something dangling from its jaws. A rabbit, limp, white-furred, freshly caught. The wolf dropped it at Oliver's feet. The boy stared, stunned. "You got this for me?" The wolf sat down, panting lightly, eyes steady. Oliver hesitated only a moment before picking up the rabbit with shaking hands. His father had taught him how to prepare small game, how to clean it, what parts were safe. He wasn't strong enough to build a fire, but hunger had long stripped away his squeamishness. As he ate, the wolf stood guard, ears swiveling at every crack of snow and wind. When Oliver was finished, he wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Thank you," he whispered, "for not leaving, for coming back." The wolf stepped closer, nudging his shoulder lightly with its muzzle. Oliver touched the wolf's cheek, fingers sinking into the thick fur. "Why are you helping me?" The wolf's eyes held a depth he couldn't name. Something wild, something ancient, something that saw more than he understood. They followed the ravine east until the sun began to dip behind the trees. Oliver walked close enough to touch the wolf's fur when the cold grew sharp. Each time he stumbled, the wolf slowed. Each time he faltered, the wolf looked back, urging him forward. Hours passed before the trees thinned and the ravine opened onto a massive clearing. The snow here was untouched, glowing pale blue beneath the twilight. And at the edge of the clearing, rising like a promise, was a line of smoke. Oliver's heart lurched. "A cabin," he breathed. "There's a cabin up there." The wolf stopped beside him, staring at the distant structure. Its ears pressed forward, tail swaying slowly. Oliver dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. "We made it." He turned to the wolf, but the animal was no longer looking at the cabin. Its head had snapped toward the trees behind them, fur bristling. A low growl rumbled in its chest. Oliver's blood ran cold. "What is it?" Branches snapped. Snow shifted. Something moved in the forest. Something large. The wolf stepped in front of him, body tense, ready. "Please," Oliver whispered, heart hammering, "don't leave me now." The forest answered with a sound he had heard only once before. A howl, not from the wolf beside him, from somewhere behind them. Deep, hungry, close. The storm had ended, but the danger had not. The howl slid through the forest like a blade, silencing the wind, freezing Oliver's breath in his chest. It wasn't the voice of the wolf beside him. It was deeper, rawer, filled with a hunger that tightened every muscle in Oliver's body. The silver wolf stood rigid in front of him, fur raised, tail low, a quiet warning rumbling in its throat. Its golden eyes never left the darkness between the trees. Oliver pressed his back against a fallen stump, heart pounding. "Is it another wolf?" he whispered. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't. Whatever made that sound was bigger, heavier, a predator that didn't share the same quiet intelligence as the wolf who had saved him. A second howl came. Closer. The silver wolf moved half a step forward, shielding Oliver with its body, paws planted firmly in the snow. Its growl deepened, vibrating through the earth. Oliver clutched its fur, breath shaking. "Please don't fight," he whispered. "You're hurt." "You can't." The wolf snapped its head back toward him. Just a quick glance, but enough. Not fearful, not hesitant, determined, protective. Before Oliver could say more, branches cracked loudly in the dark. Snow fell from the spruce as something large brushed past it. The silver wolf crouched low. Oliver held his breath. A shadow stepped through the tree line, broad, muscular, covered in thick winter fur. Not a wolf. Not exactly. Something half-starved, half-rabid, with eyes that glowed sickly green in the fading light. Its ribs stuck out, and long scars cut across its flank. A lone wolf driven mad by hunger, or worse, by sickness. It stared at Oliver, then at the silver wolf, and snarled. The sound was no warning. It was a promise. Oliver's fingers dug into the wolf's fur. "Please run," he begged. "Leave. You'll die if you fight it." But the wolf didn't move. The lone wolf lunged. The silver wolf met it halfway, colliding with a shocking crash of fur and teeth. Snow exploded around them. Oliver scrambled backward, slipping on the ice. The wolves tore at each other, snarling, rolling across the clearing in a frenzy of claws and fury. "Stop, please," Oliver cried, but his voice was swallowed by the storm of violence. The larger wolf slammed the silver wolf onto its back, jaws snapping inches from its throat. Oliver lurched forward on instinct. Not bravery, not wisdom, just sheer fear. But he stopped when the silver wolf twisted free with stunning speed and sank its teeth into the attacker's shoulder. The maddened wolf howled, whipping around and biting down on the silver wolf's flank. Blood spattered the snow. The silver wolf staggered, but didn't fall. It lunged again, using its smaller size to dodge under the bigger wolf strikes. But Oliver saw it, the injury slowing it down, the limp deepening, the breath coming in short gasps. He couldn't watch it die. Oliver's hand shook as he grabbed the broken branch he'd been leaning against. He raised it with both hands, heart hammering, terror clawing at his throat. "Hey!" he screamed. "Hey! Leave him alone." The larger wolf turned toward him. Oliver froze. Its green eyes locked onto him, and in that instant he felt death in its gaze, cold, simple, unstoppable. He stumbled backward, slipping on the snow. The predator crouched. It was going to charge. But before it could, the silver wolf slammed into its side with snarls so fierce it echoed across the valley. The two wolves tumbled again, rolling dangerously close to Oliver's feet. The larger wolf pinned the silver one, jaws opening wide for the killing bite. Oliver didn't think. He moved. With a cry torn from the center of his chest, he swung the branch with all the strength left in his frostbitten arms. The blow struck the larger wolf across the snout. It yelped, recoiling. The silver wolf twisted free. The larger wolf whipped toward Oliver, lips curling, saliva dripping from its teeth. The boy lifted the branch again, shaking uncontrollably. "Don't come closer," he whispered. "Please don't." The predator took one slow step toward him. The silver wolf leapt. This time, it struck with everything it had. Its teeth clamped onto the larger wolf's neck, dragging it backward. They crashed into a fallen tree, snow spraying. The bigger wolf snapped wildly, but its strength was failing. The silver wolf didn't let go. Oliver scrambled backward until his back hit the trunk of a pine. He wanted to run. He wanted to help. He wanted to shut his eyes and scream. But he could do none of those things. The wolves fought until the snow beneath them turned darker and heavier, until the larger wolf finally collapsed with defeated groan, its breath fading. The forest fell silent. The silver wolf stood trembling, blood staining its coat. Its breaths came in ragged bursts. As it stepped away from the fallen predator, its legs wobbled dangerously. "Hey!" Oliver crawled toward it, tears blurring his vision. "Hey, no, please." The wolf staggered toward him, collapsing into the snow halfway. Oliver threw himself beside it, arms wrapping around its neck. "Don't die," he whispered fiercely. "You can't. You saved me. Twice. You can't leave me too." The wolf's golden eyes lifted to meet his, not fading, not defeated, but unbearably tired. It nudged his hand weakly with its muzzle, then tried to stand. Oliver gasped. "No, you're hurt. Don't push yourself." But the wolf refused to stay down. With trembling legs, it rose, swaying like a dying flame in the wind. When it finally steadied, it turned its head toward the distant cabin again, the thin line of smoke curling through the sky. It wanted him to keep going. Oliver wiped his face with a shaking hand. "You're coming with me. I'm not leaving you. I swear it." The wolf blinked once, slow. Then it stepped forward. Oliver put his arm over the wolf's back for support. Together, limping, leaning on each other, they crossed the clearing. Behind them, the snow began to fall again, covering the body of the predator, erasing the signs of the battle. The storm had taken much from Oliver, but not this, not the wolf who refused to leave him. And as they made their way toward the distant glow of safety, Oliver whispered into the cold, "You stayed. No matter what, you stayed." Oliver leaned against the wolf as the two moved through the snow, step by agonizing step. Each breath burned in his throat. Each heartbeat thudded painfully inside his frozen chest. And yet, the only thing he could truly feel, past the frostbite, past the exhaustion, was fear. Not fear for himself. Fear for the wolf. The silver wolf's gait had changed. Its steps were uneven now, its body trembling with every movement. Blood dripped steadily from the long gash along its flank, staining the snow behind him like a trail of dying embers. Its breaths came in short, wet bursts, too fast, too shallow. "You're losing blood," Oliver whispered, tightening his grip around its neck. Please hold on." The wolf didn't look at him. Instead, it focused on the distant cabin, its golden eyes fixed like a compass needle pointing home. It pushed forward until the trees thinned and the slope rose sharply toward the clearing above. Oliver's knees buckled. His vision swam. I can't climb that," he said through chattering teeth. The slope wasn't tall, but the ice made it treacherous. The storm had carved the snow into frozen ridges. One wrong step could send both of them sliding back into the ravine. The wolf stopped, panting, and turned its head toward him. Its eyes softened, not with pity but with understanding. "I know," Oliver whispered, "but we have to try." He dug his numb fingers into the icy surface and began to climb, pulling himself upward while using the wolf's steady presence beside him to stay balanced. Twice he slipped, and each time the wolf pressed its shoulder into him to keep him from falling. They climbed until Oliver's hands were raw and bleeding, until his breath came in painful gasps. Near the top of the slope, his foot slid over a sheet of hidden ice, and he fell hard on his side. The wolf answered with sharp, pained yelp, its injured flank scraping the ice. Oliver pushed himself up immediately. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, tears stinging his eyes. "I'm so sorry." The wolf let out a low sound, something between reassurance and exhaustion, and nudged his shoulder. They climbed the final stretch together, and when Oliver pulled himself over the top, he collapsed onto the snow, sobbing from relief and terror. The wolf crawled beside him, shaking violently now. The cabin was only a few hundred yards away. A thin column of smoke curled from the chimney. Orange light flickered behind frosted windows. A human voice carried faintly in the wind, someone chopping wood. "We made it," Oliver whispered. "We actually made it." The emotion hit him so hard he doubled over, forehead pressed against the wolf's fur. "You saved me. You saved me again." The wolf's head lowered to the snow. Its breaths were shallow, wheezing. "Hey," Oliver said sharply. "Hey, don't do that. Don't lie down. You'll freeze. You're bleeding too much. You have to stay awake." The wolf didn't move. Panic surged through Oliver, raw and blinding. "No," he said fiercely, gripping the wolf's face with trembling hands. "No, you are not dying here. I'm not losing you." The wolf's eyes flickered open, heavy with pain but still locked on him. Still aware, still fighting. Oliver lifted the wolf's head, placing it against his lap. "Stay with me. I'll get help. I promise." His legs shook violently as he pushed himself up. He forced his body toward the cabin, stumbling through the last stretch of snow. His vision blurred. His knees collapsed twice. He kept getting up. When his fist finally hit the cabin door, he barely had the strength to make a sound. He knocked again. The door flew open. A middle-aged man stood there, rugged, bearded, dressed in a thick flannel jacket. His eyes widened when he saw the boy. "Dear God, kid, what happened to you?" Oliver tried to speak, but only a choked gasp came out. The man grabbed his arms, pulling him inside. Heat washed over Oliver's frozen skin. The rush of warmth burned so sharply he cried out. The man shut the door quickly. "Sit down. Sit down," the stranger said urgently, dragging a chair toward him. "You're half dead. Where are your parents? Were you caught in the avalanche? Tell me what happened." Oliver's breath shook violently. My friend," he gasped. "Outside." "Friend?" the man repeated, confused. Oliver shook his head urgently. "The wolf." The man froze. "The wolf." Oliver nodded, gripping the edge of the table. "He's hurt. Badly. Bleeding. Please, you have to help him." The man stared at him for a long moment, as if deciding whether the boy was delirious. Then Oliver grabbed the man's sleeve with fierce desperation. "He saved my life. He kept me alive through the storm. He fought something in the forest for me. Please, please. He's dying." The man's expression changed, softened, even. Something clicked behind his eyes. "All right," he said quietly. "Show me." He grabbed a lantern and opened the door. Oliver limped outside, leading him toward the slope. The man stopped when he saw the silver wolf lying motionless in the snow. "Jesus," he breathed. That's a big one." Oliver fell to his knees beside the wolf, wrapping his arms around its neck. "Please help him. Please." The man knelt slowly, lantern held close. He examined the wolf with cautious hands. "He's lost a lot of blood," he murmured. "Too much. He won't survive long out here." Oliver looked up, eyes shining with terror. "Then take him inside." The man hesitated. "Kid, wolves don't belong inside cabins. And if he wakes up scared." "He won't hurt you," Oliver said. He never hurt me. The man searched the boy's face. Then he exhaled sharply. All right, I'll help, but you'd better keep his head steady. Together, they lifted the wolf, carefully, slowly, and carried him toward the cabin. Oliver held tight to the wolf's neck, whispering into its fur. You're going to be okay, he said. I won't let anything happen to you. Not now. Not after everything. The man pushed the door open with his shoulder, and they stepped into the warm glow of the cabin. Whatever happens, Oliver whispered, his voice breaking, you're not alone. As they laid the wolf on the floor beside the fire, the man looked at the boy and said, Kid, this wolf must really love you. Oliver brushed trembling fingers through the wolf's fur. No, he whispered. He doesn't love me. He saved me. He pressed his forehead to the wolf's. And now I'll save him. The cabin glowed with firelight, casting warm shadows across the wooden walls as Oliver and the man lowered the injured wolf onto a blanket near the hearth. The boy knelt beside him immediately, one hand on the wolf's chest, feeling each trembling breath. The wolf's eyes fluttered open, exhausted, dull with pain, yet they remained fixed on Oliver with a quiet determination that made the boy's heart twist. He's still fighting, Oliver whispered. He won't give up. The man, who now introduced himself as Henry, grabbed a medical kit from an old chest. He's strong, Henry said, kneeling beside the wolf. But if we're going to help him, we need to work fast. I'll need you to hold him still. I will, Oliver said without hesitation. Henry hesitated for a moment, studying the boy's pale face. You care about this wolf more than I've seen some folks care about their families. Oliver looked down, brushing his hand through the wolf's thick fur. He's all I have left. Henry didn't ask more. He opened a small jar of antiseptic, then began cleaning the deep wound along the wolf's flank. The wolf tensed, teeth clenching, but he didn't snap or snarl. Oliver leaned close, whispering steady encouragement. It's okay. I'm here. You saved me, remember? Let me save you. The wolf's breathing steadied, though his body trembled from pain. Henry stitched the wound carefully, layer by layer. This is going to take time, he muttered. And even after this, we're not out of danger. Oliver nodded silently, refusing to let go of the wolf even for a moment. Hours passed. When Henry finally sat back, wiping his brow, the sky outside had grown dark. Snowflakes danced against the frosted windows. That should hold, Henry said quietly. But he's weak. He lost more blood than any wolf I've patched up before. If he survived the night, he'll have a fighting chance. Oliver swallowed hard. I'll stay awake with him. You need rest, Henry said. You're half frozen, starving, and your fingers are turning color. If you collapse, neither of you will make it. But Oliver shook his head fiercely. I'm not leaving him. Henry exhaled, realizing it was pointless to argue. All right, kid, but let me give you something warm to drink. He handed Oliver a cup of broth, and the boy drank slowly, keeping one hand resting on the wolf's neck. The cabin fell into a heavy silence, the kind that comes only after too much fear, too much pain. Outside, the wind shifted, whistling softly across the mountains. Oliver leaned closer to the wolf, laying his forehead against its fur. You stayed by my side in the storm, he murmured. So I'm staying by yours now. The wolf's golden eyes opened slightly, focusing on him. And then it did something Oliver hadn't expected. It lifted its muzzle, just enough to touch his cheek. Tears slipped down Oliver's face. You're going to be okay, he whispered. You have to be. I need you. Henry watched from the table, arms crossed. His expression softened, a mixture of awe and sorrow. I've lived in these mountains all my life, he said quietly. Never seen anything like this. Wolves don't do this. They don't protect people. They don't care like this. Oliver didn't look away from the wolf. He's different. Henry nodded slowly. Yeah, I guess he is. The night stretched on. Henry eventually dozed in his chair. Oliver remained awake, though his body screamed for rest. Every time his eyelids drooped, he forced them open again. The wolf's breathing was shallow, uneven. At times, Oliver feared it might stop altogether. He pressed closer, letting the animal feel his warmth, his presence. Don't leave me, he whispered into the fur. You're the only reason I'm still alive. Please, just stay. Hours passed. Snow piled against the door. The fire crackled, throwing sparks that danced up the chimney. And then, sometime before dawn, the wolf stirred. Its breathing grew deeper, stronger. Oliver sat up, hope flaring inside him. Hey, he said softly. Hey, you're waking up. The wolf opened its eyes fully this time. Clear, focused, alive. Oh! Oliver breathed, a sob escaping him. Thank God. You made it. Henry woke to the sound of Oliver crying, and for the first time smiled. Looks like he chose to stay, he said. You got lucky, kid. Oliver didn't look away from the wolf. No, he's the lucky one. We both are. The wolf shifted, pushing its head against Oliver's chest. Oliver wrapped his arms around it, burying his face in its neck. For the first time since the avalanche, he wasn't scared. He wasn't alone. He finally let himself believe that both of them might survive this. But survival came with a cost. A few days later, when the wolf could stand, Oliver stepped into the snow with him. The mountains were quiet, the sky clear. The wolf walked beside him slowly, still healing, but strong enough to move. Henry watched from the porch. You sure about this? He asked. Oliver nodded. He doesn't belong in a cabin. He belongs out here. The wolf stopped at the edge of the trees, turning back to look at him. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't hesitation. It was understanding. Oliver knelt in the snow, touching his forehead to the wolf's. You stayed with me when the world disappeared, he whispered. And I'll never forget that. The wolf let out a low sound, a soft, gentle rumble that vibrated through Oliver's chest. Then it stepped away, one step at a time, into the forest, into the home it had never abandoned. Oliver watched until the silver coat disappeared into the trees. A tear slipped down his cheek, but it wasn't sorrow. It was gratitude. He'll come back, Henry said quietly. Oliver nodded, staring at the forest with a soft smile. Yeah, he will, because some bonds aren't broken by storms. Some loyalty doesn't fade with distance. And some friends don't need words to stay by your side, even when snow falls silent.